In this video, here's what we'll cover: why self-compassion is having its moment, stress relief, the app versus the workbook, softening the inner critic, and its limits, self-compassion in the workplace, the bottom line, a mature, honest picture. Think about how you speak to yourself on a hard day. You spill your coffee, you miss a deadline, you snap at someone you love, and a voice starts up inside. For a lot of us, that voice is harsh. It calls us useless, or hopeless, or just not good enough. We would never talk to a friend that way, yet we do it to ourselves without a second thought. In my practice, I see how much quiet damage that inner critic can do. So this week I want to talk about self-compassion, the simple, learnable skill of treating yourself with the same warmth you would offer someone you care about. And I want to do it honestly, because 3 new studies have just landed, and together they tell a story that is far more useful than the headlines allow. A quick word on how I read this kind of research. I only trust findings from careful, peer-reviewed sources, and I treat fresh results as emerging, not settled. One study on its own rarely changes how we work. Self-compassion, who has had a remarkable decade, once brushed off as soft or self-indulgent, it is now one of the most studied ideas in mental health. So when 3 randomized trials appeared within months of each other, I read them closely. The first study asked a very practical question: if you want to learn self-compassion, does the format matter? Researchers took nearly 200 adults and split them into 2 7-week programs. One group used a guided app with personalized coach feedback. The other worked through a printed self-help workbook of more than 140 pages, with a weekly check-in email. The results were quietly instructive. Both groups lowered their stress by a meaningful amount, roughly a fifth. And those gains were still there at the 6-month follow-up. And here is the part I love: neither format beat the other. The polished app did not win. The humble workbook did just as well. The lesson is one I come back to often: the active ingredient is the practice, not the packaging. A kinder word to yourself, a hand on your own heart in a hard moment, a few minutes of loving kindness. Those exercises do the work, whether they reach you through a screen or a page. The second study is the kind I most want to report, because it is honest about limits. Researchers gave 200 adults either 6 short, 15-minute online self-compassion sessions or a matched stress reduction course, then tracked perfectionism, self-criticism, and social anxiety. The pattern was mixed. In a very human way, self-criticism fell by a moderate amount. The perfectionist's dread of making mistakes eased a little, but social anxiety barely moved at all. And, importantly, the ordinary stress reduction course produced much the same pattern. The self-compassion training was not clearly better than a good, plain alternative. So 2 things are true at once here. Self-compassion really can soften that harsh inner voice and loosen the grip of perfectionism. But a brief, do-it-yourself course is a starting point, not a cure. On its own it did almost nothing for social anxiety, which has its own proven treatment. For a loud, long-standing inner critic, the evidence points towards more structured support, such as compassion-focused therapy, or mindful self-compassion with a trained clinician, rather than a short course alone. The third study took self-compassion into the workplace, where quiet self-criticism drives so much burnout. Researchers randomly assigned 300 workers to a 4-week phone program of either self-compassion meditation, mindfulness meditation, or a waitlist while they waited their turn. The self-compassion group showed gains in work performance, mental flexibility, and a sense of psychological safety, alongside less stress and less harsh self-judgment. People stuck with it, too. Most completed around 23 of the 28 days. The honest caveat is that, for most measures, the groups did not differ by a clear statistical margin, though a closer look did favor self-compassion for work performance. This is early, modest evidence, but it points somewhere sensible. A nervous system under constant self-attack cannot do its best work. One that has learned to settle can. So what do these 3 studies add up to? Read together. They tell a mature, encouraging story that resists the hype. First, self-compassion is a real, learnable skill that lowers stress and softens self-criticism. That is now well supported. Second, the practice matters more than the platform. A modest workbook worked as well as a slick app, And what counts is actually doing it. And third, it has limits. The effects are modest. Brief self-help does little for something like social anxiety, and an entrenched inner critic usually needs more than a short course. None of that diminishes self-compassion. It places it correctly as a powerful everyday foundation, and, when the inner voice grows too loud to manage alone, a practice best deepened with support. If your self-criticism has tipped into lasting anxiety, low mood, or burnout, please know that you do not have to work it out on your own. Our team at Potentialz Unlimited in Bella Vista offers evidence-based counseling and psychology, including approaches built specifically for a harsh inner critic. You can read the full roundup, with links to every study, or book an appointment, using the links in the description below. Before you go, here's a quick recap of what we covered. Why self-compassion is having its moment. Stress relief. The app versus the workbook. Softening the inner critic and its limits. Self-compassion in the workplace. The bottom line: a mature, honest picture